Yo, what's going on, guys and girls? Pat here to do a review for Epic 7 Arise, the board game. This is the tabletop game that is based off of Epic 7, the mobile gacha game, which is what I primarily cover here on this channel. I don't do just gacha games, though. Before I was an Epic 7 content creator, I played a lot of collectible and trading card games and was a content creator for several of those games as well. I played tabletop games pretty much weekly with a lot of my best friends. So yeah, no stranger to the world of tabletop. Really wanted to share this game and its characters and its world with my friends who don't normally play gacha games. So I was super stoked to actually get into this thing. So without any other further introduction, let's start the review. Before we begin, it's really important, I feel, to acknowledge the issue of this game's missing components, at least that were promised to those of us who backed it on Kickstarter. You can't really do a Google search on Epic 7 Arise right now without running into some kind of post on Reddit or the game's Kickstarter or even Stove. Everyone is talking about the Kickstarter missing components, and I feel like if I don't acknowledge it, it is a massive disservice to many of this game's backers. Thanks to the members of the Board Game Geek community, here is a list, as far as I can tell, of all of the missing components in the game. Number 1, custom dice. The website for this game, by the way, the Epic 7 Arise website owned by Farside Games, shows that there are supposed to be 4 dice as part of the game's core components. As far as I can tell, the base game only contains 2 dice. Number 2, the base game is supposed to include 46 artifacts, at least according to the back of the box. According to the accounts of others, it appears this is not actually a correct total. The complete game, I believe, has 43, and the website that Farsight has lists, I believe, 30. The Kickstarter shows Al's Fist, Uberius' Tooth, and Stella Harpa, none of which, as far as I can tell, are in the game that I actually have. Number 3, acrylic standees for Sirmia, Silverblade Araminta, Litica, Tamarin, Sez, and Bologna. Number 4, storage trays for most of the game's components. Only the minis really have some kind of storage tray. The Kickstarter clearly shows that there are supposed to be upgraded trays. They were at least promised. I think of all of the missing components, this one is by far the most troublesome, as it makes putting the game away after your initial unboxing very, very difficult. I personally need to store my components in Ziploc bags, as well as a separate duffel bag for the various minis and expansions, because there's no real other place to put them. I also feel like I need to touch on the dice bags. People complain that this is a missing component, but the infographic on the Kickstarter clearly says it's only supposed to be 2 bags. The image shows 4 bags, but it's very clearly written as 2 dice bags included, and we got 2. So I'm going to give them a pass on that one. Lastly, Farside Games has acknowledged the missing components and released a statement which I'll put up on your screen now. The missing components apparently are being replaced by a downloadable digital campaign at a later date. This is because apparently they ran out of money due to underestimating the cost that it would take to produce the game's miniatures. The miniatures are a component that we will talk about in the first section of our review when talking about the quality of this game's materials. Let's jump into the review. As I noted in my unboxing video, the box for the base game as well as the expansion For Hope is quite good. The game has a solid weight to it, the box is very durable, and the materials that they are made out of, both the base game and For Hope, feel very high quality. The game's base components, though, can kind of be described a little bit worse there. It's going to be a mixed bag. Let's start with the tiles that make up the game board. These were described in the Kickstarter campaign as 3mm thick cardboard. A quick measurement by members of the community who have already received their copy of the game have found it to be only 2mm thick cardboard for many of these pieces. This to me is not a real deal breaker. To me, these pieces still feel very akin to many other tiles from games I've enjoyed in the past, things like Nemesis or Vast, for example. I think only the most die-hard tabletop fans are really going to notice or care about this. Many of the other cardboard components that you punch out are actually fairly nice quality as well. They're very akin to what you'd see in other board games. The included meeples are serviceable for this game and right in line again with many other board games that I have enjoyed in the past. The character cards, as I mentioned in my unboxing video, are lower quality, however, than you'd expect. They feel very akin to thick glossy paper out of a photo printer. Without some kind of plastic laminate or sleeve, I feel like these things are going to get nicked, scratched, or scuffed after some short amount of time with them. If you care at all about this game and its components, I feel like it's really important for you to invest in some kind of sleeves or protection. The artifact and skill point cards are very much going to be the same. Originally, I thought these smaller size cards would be similar to ones found in games like Ticket to Ride. While the quality here isn't terrible, again, I highly recommend you get some kind of sleeves. A few of my cards have already gotten scuff marks on them after some mild shuffling in our testing for this review, as well as some of the footage that I have on your screen throughout this video. The real standout of this product, though, both for better and worse, is going to be the minis. Most monsters are actually quite detailed and of fairly good quality. They won't be as good as some other miniature games on the market, such as Nemesis, but they are most certainly serviceable. A lot of the characters, however, especially the females, leave a lot to be desired. Many characters have small pieces or weapons that seem fairly fragile or warped, and even the slightest touch on most of these can break them. Another negative involving the minis is what I guess you could call the health notch. This is a small indicator built into the base of each of the models. You place that monster mini on a cardboard circle with the notch pointing to the number, which allows you to indicate how much health remains on the enemy. The cardboard circles, by the way, don't seem to be sized correctly some of the time, which makes things feel really messy on the game board. The Kickstarter upgraded health bases do very little in the way, by the way, of making this all easier, because it's super difficult to actually read the health on those things. Perhaps having 3 or 4 health markers included to put next to each monster would have been a better idea overall. To summarize, the quality of the board game is, as I said, a mixed bag. Some of the components are in line with many great games I've played in the past, but others are severely lacking compared to the competition. Your enjoyment of the figures that are included in this game, I think, will vary greatly. Epic 7 players may really love them, but die-hard tabletop fans may feel their immersion and enjoyment of the game hindered by how cheap and fragile many of the miniatures actually are. With quality out of the way, let's talk about the core gameplay itself now. Epic 7 Arise is a game intended for 4 players where each person chooses a hero of their choice to start. The group must work cooperatively to accomplish the story objective of whichever chapter the group decides they want to play. For this review, our group decided to play through Chapter 1 of the game's main campaign. The game ends when either your group fails to complete the mission objective, when everyone's dead, or you all complete the mission. At the end of the game, once you've completed the mission, the winner is decided by the player who has the most amount of Skystones, which is the game's currency. At the start of the game, each player receives 2 Skystones, as well as 10 random skill point cards. Think of these cards like your starting deck in a standard deck builder. Each skill point card has a number on them between 1 and 6 and comes in one of 2 varieties, a red card or a blue card. You gain 1 soul for every red card you have played during your turn once you end your turn. Blue cards draw you 1 card from your deck when played, allowing you to kind of combo off with your deck, very similar to many other deck builders in the genre. Players may spend 1 of their 2 starting Skystones to mulligan their deck if they don't feel it's very good to get 10 fresh cards. Players then place their meeples on the friendship tracker, which is primarily used to decide who in the group is in charge of making decisions, like, for example, which direction you guys are going to head out on the map. It's also used for the game's dual attack system, which we're not going to cover in this video for reasons that will become apparent in just a bit. You will then use the other meeple of your color, or maybe your acrylic standee that marks your character, on the speed notch on the game's speed tracker. This is found on the enemy attack board. The speed value determines who goes first in battles in Epic 7 Arise, which will be super important to remember for later on. Before each battle, players have the ability to buy health potions for 1 Skystone, a new skill point card to add to their deck for 1 Skystone, or an artifact card for 2 Skystones. For some reason, though, these prices are doubled in a game of 3 or less players. Why, I really could not tell you. It's in the rulebook. Don't ask questions. When purchasing a card, players look at the top 3 cards of the deck that they are trying to purchase from. For example, the skill point deck, you look at the top 3 there. Artifact deck, top 3 there. You will select one card from amongst it and put the other 2 on top of that deck in any order. Honestly, putting the top 2 back is very frustrating, as the person who buys from that deck first gets to see 3 new cards, while everyone else at the table only really is seeing 1 new card plus the 2 that the other player didn't actually want. If 2 of the 3 cards the first person sees are duds, the rest of the table is kind of stuck with them, which is a major buzzkill. Once players are ready to set off, you choose your tile, move to it, and see if there are any other hidden tiles that help advance the objective or might potentially make you run into an enemy encounter. If it's an encounter, players will then take turns placing their miniatures of their heroes on the board in the designated spots that are on each tile. When an enemy attacks, it will reveal a value between 1 and 6. If a player's hero is in one of the marked tiles that has the corresponding number, that's going to be who the enemy attacks. Some spots have multiple numbers, signaling a much higher chance of being attacked if your hero is on that spot. In a cooperative play focused group, it's probably most correct to put a very tanky character here, although if you're playing competitively and trying to get the most amount of Skystones, it may be more beneficial to save yourself, as dying has a massive drawback in this game of losing all of your Skystones upon revival. Now we come to combat itself. You reveal the monster card from the designated deck for that chapter. Place the appropriate minis, set the health total, and denote the speed values of all enemies, which is found on the bottom of the enemy reveal card. The fastest character in combat takes the first turn. In the event of a tie, players always go first. For our first game, in our very first encounter, this meant that the 2 mice we encountered each had 8 speed. That means that they went first and second. When a monster attacks, you reveal the top card of the monster attack deck and deal damage and apply its effects to the character in the revealed number's position. In our case, this was 4 damage as well as a stun, which is a turn loss, to the player that was playing Ludwig. The next attack from the second mouse was the same result, causing that player to basically die immediately on the very first turn of the game. This was incredibly jarring for our first campaign. And, it was a brand new game. None of us had ever actually played it. We felt this was really harsh, though, and basically did a mulligan. But it's really important, I feel like, to note as a new player that you can die immediately on the very first turn of the game on your very first playthrough. This brings us, by the way, now to players' turns. Each hero in Epic 7 Arise has 3 skills designated as Skill 1, Skill 2, or Skill 3, just like in the mobile game. To use a character's Skill 1, you need a pair in your hand of the same number. To use a character's Skill 2, you need a run of 3 consecutive numbers, say 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3. To use the character's final skill, you need 3 of the same number. Unlike actual Epic 7, however, in Arise, your turn does not end after just 1 skill. Players may continue chaining together skills as long as they have cards available to them. Once a card is played, it stays in front of that player and cannot be used again this turn unless an effect returns it to your hand. Once your turn is over and you pass, you will gain souls for every red card played and then draw back up to 5 cards. The souls gained may be used on subsequent turns and spent to power up whichever skill you like by paying the cost designated on the character's card. This seems all well and good until you come across a specific paragraph in the rulebook about player combat. Red cards give souls, but the rulebook also states that you draw 1 card when you play them. And it states for blue cards, you draw 1 additional card on top of the one you normally would draw. And this creates a potential flaw in the game's engine. Let me explain. Since red cards always replace themselves, at worst, your starting hand is basically going to be 5 red cards, which draws 5 new cards. This means no matter what, you're going to pretty much always draw your deck because you'll start with 5 cards, which draw 5 new cards, which draws the whole 10-card deck. That can't be right, right? So after a lot of searching online done by us on our phones, we realized that this is the way that others seem to have interpreted it on various other websites. Searching on YouTube for how to play tutorials are from well over a year ago and seem to suggest that this game does have the ability to chain cards together, although they don't have the additional draw like mentioned in the rulebook. So that got us to asking, so which is it? Is it the additional draw in the official rulebook, or is it from these outdated how to play videos? Regardless, after a lot of talking, we pressed on with the rules as written in the rulebook. Because after all, we figured if a player can just fire off a bunch of attacks, it just means it's easier for the team to beat the enemies and for us to complete the objectives. However, you hit another snag when you realize that the instruction manual doesn't explain how reward distribution works. There's only this line of text saying that when someone kills an enemy, they get sky stones. So is it just one person? Reading it, it never really specifies more than one person should get the rewards, so we all just assumed it was one person, which means that the person who gets the kill shot gets everything? Question mark? After again checking online with other people who have played the game and made posts, that seems to be the way that they interpreted it also. And remember, this is supposed to be a competitive game where the person at the end with the most sky stones wins the game. And now you're telling me that the person who gets the kill shot gets 100% of the rewards too? And this had a profound impact on our group in our first play session upon this realization. Why attack at all unless you can guarantee a kill, since you get nothing for helping otherwise? This resulted in our fastest player wiping the entire enemy team because he got to go first, collecting all of the rewards, buying new cards for his deck to get stronger, and then us pressing on to the next battle. In our second battle, that player was still the fastest player, which meant that they had the first turn again, and they just completely dismantled the enemy team once again, while the rest of us were just kind of sitting there watching. And again, they got all the rewards. When the player couldn't actually kill all the enemies in one hit, they decided to just pass. And that was really confusing at first, but then, it went to my turn and I couldn't kill anything. And I figured, you know what? I'll help the group. I'll deal 4 damage to the enemy, and then it'll go to the next player. This then translated into the next player quickly sweeping up the enemy, getting all the rewards, and I got nothing. So hopefully you can see where this is going. The game very, very quickly devolved into everyone looking at the first player and saying, hey, can you kill it instantly? And if they could, they did. And if they didn't, then the game passed to the next player, and then everyone turned to that player and said, hey, can you kill it instantly? And if you couldn't, you'd pass. And this continues until either everyone in the party is dead or someone has a hand that can actually just instantly end the fight. And this same loop repeats until the chapter you're playing is over. And that was pretty much the experiences of my friends and I playing Epic 7 Arise the board game, and as you could probably tell, wasn't really super enjoyable. Even if we did somehow manage to get the rewards distribution problem wrong, I don't think it changes a whole heck of a lot. So think about it this way. Even if we all got sky stones upon enemies getting killed, the fastest player is still going to take the first turn every time, and with the way that the draw system is currently structured, they will simply just plow through every enemy, and that's going to leave potentially many other players at the table unable to actually take a turn. Maybe the second fastest player might actually get a turn, but the third or the fourth, that's a bit less likely. In fact, I came across a Kickstarter post that details this exact phenomenon. An individual was playing a 3-hour campaign as Dark Corvus, and that individual in 3 hours only got to play 2 turns of Epic 7 Arise the board game. Now imagine you invite your 3 closest friends over on, say, a Friday night to play Epic 7 Arise, and 50% or even one person at the table never actually gets to take a turn. They don't actually get to play the game. That person, their enjoyment of the game is going to be very low, and at the worst case, they might feel slighted, like you wasted their time because they wanted to participate, be there, and play the game with their friends. And the rule set has made it so that that person doesn't really get to do anything. And again, that's really, really rough. If anyone from Farside Games does stumble upon this video, I'm sure that at some point the previous versions of this game were somewhat different. Things were not intended to turn out in the state that I have displayed here in this video. I have had 2 to 3 bouts in the past in game design, so I understand where you're coming from. Game design is very hard, and I want to say 2/3 of the time, the things that I thought would make it into the finished product didn't actually make it into the finished product. And so I'm sure that out of the box, Epic 7 Arise is a completely different game than it was originally envisioned when it was pitched on Kickstarter. What the game needs right now, I think, is a frequently asked questions document. And whether that comes from Farside themselves to clarify a lot of the issues and questions that players have, or it comes from the community banding together, something needs to be done. Rules need to be adjusted in this game because right now it is just not very enjoyable. So it needs tweaks to make it an enjoyable experience and to make sure that everyone is actually on the same page. I think with some tweaks, this could be a very, very good game. For example, I think that the blue cards should be the only cards that draw cards. Red cards, artifacts, equipments, those don't need to draw, so that way we can avoid those, really big super turns. I do think that this game should be completely cooperative. I think the competitive aspect is one of the major problems with the game. It makes it so that people aren't really working together to accomplish the goals. People are not really trying to build diverse decks that really help people out. I think rewards distribution should be normalized so that basically everybody gets everything, or maybe the kill shot player gets one extra and everybody else gets one. Something needs to be adjusted there. And then as far as buying things for the artifact or the skill point shop, whatever isn't purchased needs to either go to a discard pile and then shuffled if the deck runs out, or go to the bottom of the deck. That way it can encourage, again, more fun and diverse deck building. And these are just some fixes that my friends and I have come up with. And I know over on Board Game Geek, there are a dedicated number of users that are trying very hard to make even more tweaks and fixes to the game. So if you're not satisfied with the base product, I encourage you to do some searching over on those forums and kind of try to mix and match and make your own, unless, again, Farside makes some updates and adjustments as well. Out of the box, with the current way that the instructions have been interpreted by me and my friends as well as others online, I would give this game a D for do not buy, or even an outright fail, because again, you can invite your best friends over and half of them might not actually even get to play the game. That is, in my book, very inexcusable. I think with some changes to this game, some heavy tweaks, we could get to a C+, maybe even like a B territory. I think that there is a lot of potential in the systems here that are at work, especially the combat, the soul burns, the deck building aspect. That stuff is all phenomenal. We just need to clean up everything else. Maybe even like enemy health totals. All that stuff needs to be adjusted. So that way it is a more complete package, a more enjoyable package for 4 players. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Epic 7 Arise, the board game. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Have you played Epic 7 Arise, the board game? If you have, let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are. If you have any other tweaks or suggestions, or even if I got something wrong with me and my friends, again, as always, let me know down in the comments below any and all thoughts. So that's going to be it here for me, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all in the very next video. But before that, obviously, enjoy your day and the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all later. Bye-bye now.